Okay, hi guys. This is just gonna be pretty much my first attempt at a Roxxare video. Basically, I'm gonna be doing some replay analysis for a first-time person who I have never, came across before, and pretty much haven't done any sort of a session before in the past. So it's just a cut and dry, normal replay analysis. And the first thing that I'd like to, start off doing is to have a look at their op.gg, get a general feel for at least a tiny bit of the person without actually, previously speaking to them or anything like that. So, if you have a look at his recents, you can see he's been playing exclusively ranked, and he's been on a pretty damn rough streak at the moment. So, just going into this game, there might be a few issues with mentalities and stuff like that going into it, and that's always something to watch out for. But it might not have as big an effect on him after this game because he's just won a match. But also, if you look at his recents, he's been playing a lot of Jarvan, but he's actually on a negative win rate on it. The KDA isn't too bad, which, you'd want to keep it about above 3.0 usually, but it's not that terrible. Something to look at is the lack of CS though, so I'm assuming he's going to be roaming a lot and stuff like that, seeing he's playing an incredibly aggressive loadout here with Thunderlords and Ignite. But there really isn't too many conclusions that I can draw from this. He has a negative win ratio overall, and he's in Gold 5, so basically that gives me a little bit of an idea of what I'm, going to be using inside of this game and what I'm going to be, playing with or doing a little bit of analysis on. Now, with that said, this is my first ever video style doing this. I'm used to doing very different styles of coaching, but it's something which has been pretty interesting, and it's something which I want to get in on. So, if you let me know if you want any music, any additional editing, anything like that, and yeah, let's get right into it pretty much. If you look at the beginning of this match, because inside of the replay system, which I don't know why they still haven't added, but you still can't see keystones. I'm just going to have a quick look at keystones, see if there's anything overly interesting that we can really take from this. All that I can really see is that they've got an Annie mid with Storm Riders, and they've got a Zac top. Other than that, all of the keystones are relatively normal. We also have what appears to be a Gragas support and an Echo mid, which the Echo mid's a fine pick. I'm not so sure about Gragas support. It's not that great anymore, but something a little bit weird is the fact that Caitlyn also took Feather Battle, and especially inside of a laning phase against Braum and Twitch, she's going to want to be a lot more focused on sustain to be able, and just to be able to pressure that lane a little bit more. But these are all things which have no direct influence on him. So if you look at his matchup, he's against a Zac with Teleport as opposed to his Ignite. So if he doesn't start getting some early kills, he's probably going to lose wave pressure, and as a result of that, fall behind. So with that said, let's actually head on into the actual replay and see what we're working with. So going into the replay, looking at first item pickups, I'm going to move around some people, make sure they're in the right position, because Riot hasn't added in a de facto thing yet. They're saying that they're going to do that for the next season though, which is interesting. But if you have a look, everything here is relatively normal so far. Literally everything is normal. Appears that both of the ADCs have went for Biscuits, which is again normal for Feather Battle users. And in the top lane, he's gone for a Ruby Crystal versus a oh damn, I've actually forgotten what that's called. My bad. Corrupting Potion, obviously. But if you look at the fact that he has a Corrupting Potion, I probably would have went for a Doran's Blade, because I was going to be going for aggressive trades in the early game. But it's all down to personal preference, really, especially when it comes to J4. There are so many valid item starts. You could go Longsword, free pots, you could go Corrupting Potion, you can go Doran's Shield, you can go Doran's Blade, and literally all of these item starts are completely acceptable. But looking at the fact that he's going for a more aggressive rather than a more drawn out phase, he's probably should have started either Longsword or Doran's Blade. Because if you go Corrupting Potion, you're more looking for like long drawn out trades, especially with stuff like Grass of Undying, etc. But that isn't typically what you're going to be seeing from Jarvan. He might poke once or twice at the Q, but then you're going to be looking for him to go in for a all-in trade where he auto-attacks auto-attacks the Zac as he goes in for creeps a lot of the time. But we'll see how that plays out. It shouldn't have too detrimental in it, of an influence. And for some reason, I've got Fog of War turned on for blue. Whoops. But yeah, here we go. If we just have a general look at what we can see from the Jarvan's perspective, as far as, looking at issues with laning, issues with fundamentals of rotating and stuff like that, without getting too much in depth with his masteries, runes, etc. and stuff that can be done outside of the game, because I don't really have access to that kind of information. And looking here, he's done a weird start where he's allowing the Zac to push in on him. And there are all sorts of ways you can set up a freeze in this situation, but everything's relatively okay. There isn't really anything that he's doing wrong in this part of the game, I don't think. But right here, he's tanking way too much creep damage. He should be hugging much closer towards the top end of the brush to be able to constantly get rid of that creep aggro. But he won the trade to a point, but the thing is that the Zac has a lot of built-in sustain inside of his kit, so I'm not sure if he's going to actually have ended up winning that trade. But the Zac has ended up using his potion in response to him using a corrupting potion charge, which is always pretty nice. In this particular part of the laning phase, I'd say that the J4 is ahead, and if Zac takes another trade like that, he'll be in lethal range for an EQ all-in from Jarvan, which is pretty much exactly how you want to have this game played. But quickly, something to mention here is that if you look at the enemy jungler, they have an Evelynn that is just turned up bot lane, and he knows that this Evelynn is bot lane, and here he also knows that the Amumu is around about red buff, and he's looking healthy enough, and he apparently, although this always bugs out, he has smite, so he should be able to smite the red buff and be enough HP to easily come up and do a top lane gank. So he should be calling for one or two things to happen here. He should be calling for the Amumu to straight away go in and gank, or he should be calling for something along the lines of him all-inning whilst Amumu goes mid, because basically all of the pressure at the moment is situated around about the bot lane, and knowing that Evelynn cannot do anything to him in this situation, he should literally call for one of two things to happen. The Amumu to go mid or take blue buff, or for the Amumu to come into his lane, let it freeze up. So right here you can actually see that there's a natural push that's about to be happening inside of his lane, where if he just freezes right here, this cannon is going to push upwards a little bit, and if that pushes upwards into there, he can freeze the wave like pretty much like that, and that'll allow Amumu to get a really nice easy gank path coming in here. And if he just walks in like that, it'll be literally a free kill because all of the creeps are going to be situated just up here, and if they're situated up here, there's no way that they can block the Zac from being binded. But if Amumu goes for a buff, the creep wave could actually end up coming in. So it's really down to what if he calls here, but there should be some action going on, like, relatively soon. If there isn't, then I'd be really shocked. I mean, we're looking at bot lane, and I don't think his team is going to lose first blood here, or at least I really don't think they should. If they do, it'll be because Caitlyn overextends and goes back in, but if anything, the blue team should be wanting to back off here. But again, we're going to concentrate on Jarvan for this part of the game. Now, nothing is really happening, and he hasn't exactly allowed the freeze to start up. In fact, he's pushing pretty hard, which really isn't what you wanted to do in this situation, because Zac was so vulnerable to being ganked. Again, the bot lane trade goes down, nothing happens, but now you've really got no opportunity to have this Amumu gank, because he took his red and went for the gank afterwards, which will have the minions in the way of this Zac. But hopefully you can still make this work, because he moved out of position. That should be first blood going down for the Jarvan. That's always nice. You could have played it a little bit better with the minion wave freezing, but Zac misplayed there and allowed himself to be picked up for the first blood, which is a really huge deal, especially seeing as the Amumu actually let you get that down for yourself. The Amumu probably should have helped you shove this wave in here, because then you could have denied Zac at least a wave, maybe 2 waves of experience. But see, as you can see here, now Zac just gets to teleport in, and he literally misses like 2 creeps, which is a little bit of a bummer. Amumu probably should have helped you there. But with that said, still a nice first blood and still a nice opportunity. Looks like Amumu is calling for a chance to actually... I'm going to just drag this up here. It looks like Amumu has actually been the one calling in for the lane gank. I don't think the Jarvan wanted this to happen, but for some reason the pings aren't coming through, but there's not much I can do about that right this second. But with that said, I don't know if this will be able to work out, because Zac should be able to just EQ out, but no, he uses it again right on top of the Jarvan, and that's a really nice play. I mean, you could see that the J4 wanted to back, but the Amumu really took charge there, and it was a nice free first blood. And seeing stuff like that happening is not typically a gank that you'd expect to go down in gold elo, so that was at least a positive to really concentrate on, is that you're receiving ganks well, and your wave control, though it could be better, isn't actually abysmal, which is always a great little fundamental to have building on in the future. And your CSing, honestly, is completely fine. I mean, you've missed a few CS, but nothing too considerable. You're around about the right CS for the mark. You want to aim to be at about 60 to 80 CS by 10 minutes. And the way you're going, you should be able to reach that. And just quickly checking how much gold he has 1700 gold versus a team with 3 AP, and apparently he took support masteries by accident, which is always interesting. Again, I can't actually see any of it. But he had Thunder Lords, which is a relatively... So that would actually explain a lot. That would explain why he had the Corrupting Potion start, because he's used to going Corrupting Potion instead of taking Thunder Lords. But at the same time, it's going pretty well, and Jarvan top of Thunder Lords isn't something that you would, expect not to see on a regular basis. Now, looking at the amount of gold he has two real options. He could go for a Tiamat and start to build in towards that, or he could probably be building towards Hex Drinker, or straight up just build up the Dirk to be able to completely destroy the Zac in lane. And the start that I'd go for is probably just straight Dirk boots, couple of... Well, I'd say a couple of pink wards just so that you can put down an aggressive pink ward, and then if he clears that out, put down a defensive pink ward. But you definitely want to be picking up pink wards on this back because they have an L in. Let's see what he actually ends up going with. He's typing away. Okay, so he goes with a Tiamat and a longsword, and he sells it and goes for boots instead. He has gold here for pink wards, so he definitely should have bought pink wards in this situation, and it's something that you really want to watch out for, is that you always want to buy pink wards. Literally always. Unless you already have one down, and you don't think it's going to be dying anytime soon, you should carry a pink ward on you at all times. This is especially important when playing against champions such as Evelynn, which can only be detected by these pink wards. Now, looking at other stuff that's been going on in the map, Echo just died, but he's managed to pick up 2 kills in the top side, so everything's generally going pretty well. The Zac here is playing incredibly stupid because he just managed to get off a free half of his health for free without even landing your EQ knockup. But with this build here, you should be able to pick up another kill here potentially because you still have your flash. Yep, that should be another kill. Yep, good job. I mean, honestly, that Zac is playing a little bit questionably, but you're doing a really good job at taking advantage of all the mistakes that he's making. But here, you didn't have a pink ward even set up, let alone, you wouldn't have even had the chance because of the fact that you went so aggressive early on. And we hadn't seen Evelynn anywhere except mid lane last time, which should have been a bit of an indication that was going to happen. But honestly, I don't think you would have been in the right place to play around that. The only way that that could have been played around a bit better is if instead of, if we back it up a little bit, when you got into the lane, when you got into the lane here, instead of like going super aggressive onto the, Zac, you could have just stayed here, carried on farming up, and just taken the lane slowly, because you've got a Tiamat. You could have actually really easily just taken complete control of this lane here, and freeze it so that the Zac's out of range of the creeps, and then instant shove it in. And the result of that would have been that you could have let those creeps die, and then have it freeze around about here, and if the creeps are frozen here, the second you see Zac go to E onto you, you could jump out and be completely safe from any sort of Evelynn gank. But again, your team has no detection along any of this river, inside the jungle, or at the blue buff. So there's literally no way of you being able to tell that you're going to get ganked here. So something to really think about is making sure you have those pink wards on you at all time, because if you don't, you could be punished just like you are being here. But at the same time, a 1-for-1 trade, even though they get a shutdown on you, isn't terrible, but it could have been a better situation for sure. The fact that you're still managing to keep this Zac oppressed with little kills, little farm, means that he's going to be absolutely useless. But if you continue with this kind of line of play, you're going to end up also having a detrimental effect on your own creep score. And if you don't get creeps, it's a little bit of a myth where, if I'm getting loads of kills and going for 1-for-1 trades, it's actually good, because in actuality, that's going to put you behind in relative to the rest of the map, because the rest of the map's going to be farming and getting experience, whereas you're going to be spending most of your time going to the lane, dying, and generally speaking, that won't pick you up as much gold as just, safe farming a lane will, and you should probably focus more on farming and taking free kills where they're available, rather than forcing kills like you are here. But, again, you had a nice little reactive play to the Zac. You probably could have concentrated on playing a little bit more defensively, but generally speaking, you're doing a pretty good job at the moment. So there really isn't that much to complain about. Here again, just watching You stick around when you probably could have backed off after that kill, to be honest. But again, there's not really much you could have done after you committed to that 1-for-1 trade. It's just worth thinking about. Should you be going in for these 1-for-1 trades when you have little to no vision on Evelynn? Now, back into the laning phase. Here, you should probably be setting up a freeze. There's no real reason to shove or to play aggressively like you are right now. If you set up a freeze right now, the Zack's going to be completely starved of the next couple of waves. And you still haven't picked up a pink ward, and now you appear to be building into a phage. So that's really something which you should probably work on as well. Your build optimization isn't great. On top lane Jarvan, I don't actually think that, Black Cleaver is okay, but I don't think Triforce is that alright. And if I was you, I would have built early on into a Hexdrinker or a Dirk, just to be able to build it into the Maw, because they have a triple AP comp on their team. And with that said, you're going to go down for a ward here. This is a very shallow ward, which really won't give you any information, because when you're playing versus Evelynn, the only times where you're going to actually be able to spot her out here is where she's attacking the Scuttle Crab, and then she reveals herself by hitting the Scuttle Crab and running up to here. Other than that, that ward is literally never going to give you any sort of vision of Evelynn, because the timings based on, and this is just something to know about when playing versus Evelynn, the timings will mean that by here, she's already invisible again. Or, for instance, if she's going from Wolves, oops, I've still got that line there, I'm still getting used to Epic Pen, but if she's going from Wolves, around about there, that's when she'll be invisible again. So, that ward really isn't going to be giving you any sort of vision at all. So, the better thing to do here, especially after you just shove the lane in like this, is you could have had quite a few ward spots that you could have went for, which would have been a lot more constructive than the one that you went for, just that second. The first of which is warding right here, and as a result of warding there, or a little bit lower there, perhaps there, if you ward like in that general area over there, then you'll be able to see her if she's coming up from Wolves, or if she's coming down from Gromp, or if she's taking blue buff, and it gives you vision on if blue buff is up. This will mean that Evelynn really, if she's farming jungle, won't be able to gank you like that, and if not, she's probably going to have been around mid and been spotted around mid. But that's about all you can do to gain vision on the Evelynn right now. But this ward here will literally never give you vision on Evelynn unless she was taking Scuttle Crab and it got pushed up. So you probably could have, especially whilst you've got the wave just here, you could have just taken the time where you're not going to be able to hit the CS, let it refreeze around about here, and gone on ward over there. But again, that's a little issue. There really haven't been that many big issues, but it's little things like this which can contribute to a game being a loss rather than a victory. Got off a nice little bit of harass there. The team literally has no pink wards and has no idea where Evelynn is at any point in the game, but Evelynn is wasting a lot of her time on the bot side of the map when no one's even there. Annie here is gonna die, yeah, for literally no reason because she went back in, which is, again, nothing to do with you. I don't know why the map's even gone off of you right now. But if you look at your creep score now, relative to how much you should have, you're actually starting to fall a little bit behind. I don't imagine that you'll have 70 or 80 creeps by this mark, but if you look at the rest of the creep score in the game, you're really not that far behind relative to everyone else. And here you go for an all-in when Zack definitely does still have passive, and it should be fine. I don't think there should be an issue with this, because you should just be able to kill him like this, yeah. And the one thing to notice, though, is that if the Zack wasn't a complete idiot there, he wouldn't have ulted you like that, because if you could watch this again, right going into this trade, he just ults you there. Instead of doing that, he probably should have just backed off so you couldn't get off a free auto attack, and then once you're a little bit more committed, so let's say, let's rewind it back a little bit again. If you're looking at the all-in right here, the second you use your ultimate, it lands you right about here, I think. So, yeah, if you have a look at the limits of this wall, right here, he should have walked backwards to here, and then used his ultimate to knock you back, but keep you inside of your wall. That would have effectively meant that if you go in for the kill, you're going to die. There is no doubt about that. But also, if you want to just collapse the wall and walk out, he survives and keeps his passive. But instead, he really does a bit of a questionable trade where he pushes you outside of your wall, which saves your life, and walks close enough for you to auto-attack him. So a little bit of, again, of a micro misplay on the end of the Zack. But again, you had a nice little all-in and managed to really take advantage of that. Here, you should actually be concentrating on taking out these creeps, so that the next wave coming in can instantly push into the tower. Instead, what you're doing is doing a kind of, it's a terrible mistake that a lot of people make, but if you were to kill those creeps, then that entire wave there would have crashed into the tower, and on top of that, you would have had an extra wave before you can go back. And then the creeps probably would have done about the same amount of damage that you would have done to that tower. So it's something that really, if you're a top lane player or if you regularly play top lane, it's something that you really need to concentrate on, is wave control and making sure you crash the towers in properly. Now, I take back what I said earlier about the Phage, because instead you picked up a armlet, or a gauntlet, and it's a Jorum's Fist, actually, what I'm on about. But that's going to be building clearly into a Titanic Hydra, which is a really nice item on Jarvan. Probably not an early rush item, as it scales heavily off of HP, and there are a lot of other items which you probably want to be picking up early on here. For instance, you could have probably went for a Spirit Visage, maybe something along those lines, but generally speaking, Spirit Visage would have only been a valid option if you had the Mastery, which you had intended to take, or I assume you intended to take in Battle of Undying. So generally speaking, your build path's shaping up kind of nicely. You've got a nice lead. If you include the 4 kills, you're well on target for the amount of farm you should have at this point in time. And here we see a Mumu coming up to gank. Evelynn is not far away, but again, you have no way of knowing. But this is just going to be a Zac dying, albeit not, particularly cleanly on the back of that Mumu gank. And right here, I'm curious as to how you're going to handle this. You should definitely go and proxy the waves coming up here, because there's literally no way that they can be punished. And based on the fact that you still have no knowledge of where Evelynn is, if you want to draw her out and get her into the top lane, especially if you're keeping a Mumu around, it's a pretty good idea. But instead, you're just going to go straight for the tower. Not a particularly bad play, but again, there are better plays that you could have done, because now this entire creep wave is still going to be there, and you're not going to be able to free farm that creep wave. And if you just froze it right there, you would have been able to make a lot more of that kill. But these are all pretty in-depth wave control, devices which are used on a regular basis, and it's really hard to be able to tell which one you're supposed to be using unless you're thinking actively about it, and that's something which I could go over in future games, and really is probably a highlight and a focus that we'd want to be looking at. Right here, it looks like bot lane's going to be able to just walk it out. Gragas might die, but yeah, Gragas is dead for sure. But this Annie is just on a really nice roam down, and what you probably should have done, instead of taking this Rift Herald here, is with a Mumu, gone and got a free mid lane tower. At this point in time, there's literally no way that they could have defended against that, and if you get a free mid lane tower, then you can rotate over, take Rift Herald, and then you can go up top lane and completely and catch the 2 waves, because there's going to be another wave that's up here by the time you would have gotten back, and it would have been a genuinely nice play to do. But taking the Rift Herald isn't a bad idea anyway, and it looks like Echo might be able to take the tower because of the fact that an Annie or Evelynn didn't rotate to mid to stop him, which again is a little bit of a macro misplay on the enemy team. But there really isn't much to say about that. The main problems that I'm picking up on so far is your knowledge of jungle pressure, your knowledge of wave control, and definitely warding. You want to be warding a lot more proactively at this point in the game, and right now, you probably shouldn't even be top. You should have backed and started rotating in with your team. The first Drake is, of course, a Wind Drake, though, which means that there is a lot less pressure on taking an early dragon. But here, if you were to get ganked by Evelynn, which you definitely could have been, you would have been dead for sure. You have no mana, and you have no vision on Evelynn. Looking at your build, you could go straight for a Titanic Hydra, which is nice, and then into a Phage. If the Phage is going into Black Cleaver, it'll be a nice little bruiser build. If he goes for Triforce, I'm a little bit concerned because there's not much HP on that item, and it genuinely isn't that nice of a fit with Titanic Hydra or with Jarvan as a whole right now. But again, just watching you farm up, you probably definitely should have rotated in earlier with your team, but your team seems to be doing a good job without you, so you're not going to be punished too much for it. There's something to... I'm going to quickly go back and rewind to watch that, because you seem to have done a decently aggressive play here, so you have no idea where Evelynn etc. is, but if you're planning on going in here, then that's all you needed to do. That's a free kill. Here, you have no idea where any of the enemy team is. You know that they were taking Dragon because your team was, just fighting around that area. So you probably should have been a lot further away than where you were. And going for a greedy ward there, which gives you absolutely no vision, has just managed to get you and probably the Amumu killed as well. But it looks like your team might be able to make this make up for that little mistake, but actually no. It's going to be ending up being a couple of people dying that really shouldn't have ended up dying. Zach's probably going to end up dying here as well, but that's just because, again, he's making a greedy play. But to concentrate on what you did, you went for a greedy ward, which would have given you no real vision, and you went a little bit too aggressive. After you picked up the kill on Annie, you should have backed off. But again, you probably should have done a rotation a lot sooner to help out your team here. Before the dragon fight, because it's obvious that there's nothing you can do top other than farm. So at this point in time, you really should have been rotating in sooner. Because if you don't rotate with your teammates, firstly, it's going to leave them where, clearly, if you look at your bot lane, they're struggling. They're really struggling. So you should probably be around that area, and mid lane isn't doing too well either. You're really the only person with a lead in your entire team. Of course, that's probably due to stuff like that. But knowing that you're the only person with a strong lead in your team, if you just continue, farming away topside, all it's going to do is mean all of your team's pressure, or potential pressure that they might have had, is just gone. And as a result of that, your teammates are starting to lose a lot of the macro play in this game. And if you look at the only real weak area right now, you need to go into bot lane, and I didn't even know the tower was this low. But you really need to start rotating into bot lane, pushing down those waves and getting that free tower. Looking at it though, you're now overextending mid lane with absolutely no vision at all, and you're going to end up dying. And Mumu is also randomly just overextended in the mid side, and you're really going to want to start buying pink wards, because I've only seen one pink ward being purchased this entire game by other teams, and as a result of that, you guys are getting punished heavily for misplays at the moment. It could be worse. Like, you could have straight up not rotated and stayed topside, but if you stayed topside instead of just farming mid overextended, then you know that topside is a much safer area of the map right now. So the fact that you were overextended here when you could have been farming up here is a little bit concerning, and as a result of that, they're going to end up taking a mid lane tower and taking a free kills. Caitlyn gets the bot tower for free, and then she probably should have backed and helped out here, because they just get a tower for free, and mid lane tower going down like that, it really isn't that great. But based on how the next couple of minutes go, it could easily be really turned around quite a lot. That's a really nice Greg assault, and then you jump in, do a hit. You built Sheen, which I would have built a Stinger afterwards, but then Caitlyn gets picked off because, again, she was overextending, not being where she should be on the map, which really seems to be a bit of a highlight for this part of the match. You get the Annie flash. You should probably just back off here, but it doesn't look like you're going to be punished for it either way. Now you go incredibly, insanely deep, which is inevitably going to get you punished. So, something to watch out for. The Annie really should have died there. That was a bit retarded on her part as well. But there was no need to be so greedy. There are so many better things you could have been doing, like shoving in mid, or, well, a number of other things. Evelyn here is going to be able to pick up a free kill. Well, yeah, she's definitely going to be able to pick that up for free. But knowing this, you probably going to, like, attribute all of the last issues to the fact of macro play. Your teammates have been having one person here, two people here, and there's really no reason for any of these people to be dying other than the fact that you're not grouping up, you're not doing rotations, and that's something to think about. If you look at the fact that Dragon's going to be coming up, and again, I hate the spectator client because I can't see, but if you have a look, it's a mountain dragon, and if you look at the chat, the dragon was taken at 15:25, which means it's going to be coming up within the next minute. So you guys should really have probably shoved that wave and then backed off defensively to set up for a mountain drake. And it's stuff like this which is going to end up snowballing their team into a victory, because at the moment they're not even having to do rotations. They're not having to do any sort of macro play whatsoever. You're handing that to them on a plate by doing overextensions like this. If you die for free and then someone else gets caught and everyone gets caught dying for free, all it's going to do is mean that they don't have to force plays, they don't have to force top lane tower, they don't have to force mid lane tower, they don't have to force anything. It'll just fall into their lap because of the fact that people are getting caught out and people are dying. So something to concentrate on is playing much more defensively, especially when versus snowballing Evelyn. You literally have no wards and no pink wards. None of you have bought a single pink ward this game other than Echo, and that pink ward was placed in a pretty retarded spot to the point where it was just taken out instantly. So something to really think about at this point is play more defensively, play around your sight line, which at the moment you've got no pressure in the bot side jungle. That's no man's land. So the only place where you can really start to build up pressure is around this top side. And knowing that, you guys should be rotating in mid, you should be rotating in top, and you should be trying to push in here so that you have some form of pressure. But instead, you're just getting caught out in random places, and that's really not going to do you any good, because if we count the number of wards from the red side, 0. We've literally have 0 wards, which is actually a first in doing replay analysis. Where I say, thinking to myself, you know, there's no wards, and then there are actually literally no wards. So something to think about is always have a slot open for a pink ward, and be telling your teammates constantly to buy pink wards and to rotate and give them kind of ideas of what you guys want to be doing, because the Caitlyn overextended, you overextended, they overextended, and it's just being punished repeatedly. If you guys group up sooner, you could turn this into a winnable game still, even though at this point you threw away a fairly reasonable lead that you actually did have at one point. Now, if you look at the gold discrepancy, it's, again, not that bad. You've gotten some decent amount of towers. They haven't been farming very well because they've been focusing on getting kills onto the Twitch and Evelyn, who really, those are the exact right people that they want to be getting their team onto. But if you look at your current build, by building Triforce, you've got no real tankiness. You've got no real defensive stats at all, so you're going to have to constantly be going in. And it's really starting to get a little bit concerning to the point where your build path, you've invested, you know, so much into this Trinity Force, which I'm pretty sure is like a 3800 item, when you could have built just as easily a Hex Shrinker and Black Cleaver for a little bit over the price, but by now you already would have had the Hex Shrinker and you would have had the Phage, which are the important components, and you'd be a lot better in any of these fights. So another thing to think about is just making sure you keep your build path at least semi-optimized at this point in time. You look at the amount of gold that you have, you know, compared to the rest of your team. Literally, you are at least 1,000 gold above everyone on your friendly team, and you're rivaling the 2 most fed opponents. You do a really nice all-in there. That was a really nice pick. But, again, you guys have no wards whatsoever, but the enemy team now is doing what you were doing, which are these overextensions, which will allow them to lose the game. And as I was just saying, with a little bit of correct macro play, as you can see, all 4 of you are grouped up, pushing the right area, which is the top and mid side. Admittedly, the Caitlyn definitely should be grouped with you here because you'd be able to pick up a tower for free. But once again, you've overextended, leaving your teammates to die, when if you were there as well, there was no way that they could have went aggressive, and now I'm pretty sure you're going to die as well. And yep, you're going to die here for free. Caitlyn is not going to be able to get a top lane tower unless they don't, you know, rotate or react at all. And that was all for literally nothing. You could have just played here, played safe, and you would have been able to take it into another kill, maybe even a tower. But instead, you ended up just losing all of that lead, and you've built straight into a Triforce, which, again, really isn't going to do that much for you. It's going to give you the Phage active, and that's about it. There's no real reason for you to have bought that item. If we're looking at Twitch here, he probably should have ulted sooner. It would have resulted in the Caitlyn kill for free. They wasted both summoners on the Caitlyn just for the flash and ult of the Twitch. And I believe the Caitlyn should be able to get away here. If not, then he's going to get really greedy. Yeah, he's just going to die. That's no Caitlyn ult. Why did... Now she's just going to die to Evelyn. Okay, this is getting a little bit concerning at this point. Basically, there are so many people who are doing incredibly stupid micro and macro plays at this point, and this is going to how you end up losing the game. The Caitlyn, there's nothing you can really do about stuff like that. Now, this is something important which I just want to stress to people. Don't worry about the stuff that you can't do anything about. But you probably could have been messaging your team, pinging your team, trying to get them into a situation where they group up and are in the right places. But you can't be that voice of reason when you're over here, when your teammates are literally dying over here. So, something which I would have done at this point in the game is take a step back, look at your win conditions, which are getting dragons and starting to push in on the mid and top side. And if you get that dragon, then you can push in for the mid and top side. Then that's a perfect macro play. You'll be able to rotate into Baron if they end up doing throws here, and it'll just be completely safe. So you need to take a step back, stop playing so aggressive, look up for pink wards, because you still haven't bought a pink ward. Look for pink wards, try and regain control of this map, because at the moment, all of these misplays on macro and micro level have actually ended up getting you guys caught out. Like, almost repeatedly, to the point where it's looking like you won't be able to pick up this game. But it's still a winnable game, just on the basis that you guys aren't that far behind. You literally could turn this around with one decent group up and one decent team fight. Your team fight isn't that bad. You have a Jarvan, you have an Amumu. there are a little bit of issues with the fact that you're forcing Dragon here when really the only reason for doing that is the fact that you saw Evelynn. You had no idea where the rest of the team was, and Annie misses her Tibbers there, which results in her getting one shot as opposed to you all just dying. But as a result, I mean, honestly, that was just a bad play on their part. You really could have had that easily turn around into you guys dying there, and you move up, and there was nothing you could have done about that. The Evelynn was probably going to pick you up regardless. But if the Annie had actually done the correct play there, you guys would have all died and would have lost a considerable amount more than you're actually going to end up doing. And I'm pretty sure that Evelynn just overextended as well. So there are a lot of mistakes being made in this match, and your job, especially as the Fed member of your team playing an assassin, is that you want to be penalizing these mistakes like you did on the Annie. And once you do that, and once you start picking up pink wards, you'll be able to react to the fact that Evelynn's coming down. Although, you probably should have known that because they walked through this tower line here, which would have gave you the vision on Evelynn. So you probably would have been safer going for this route out. But it's little things like that which will make a difference between you winning and you losing the game. But stuff like that where you went into Dragon, you did the correct rotation, you went into Dragon whilst they were top lane, and you went on and penalized the Annie after she did a misplay. So it's stuff like that which gives me faith that you might be able to turn around this game. But it's stuff like your build path, which you're now building a Kindle gem, which I imagine is a Spirit Visage when you have no lifesteal. Also, you then auto-attacked a minion twice there after jumping in, so you just pretty much suicided. When your team was obviously in the situation where they wanted to run away, you ended up going in, which is just a miscommunication, which really is going to happen in solo queue quite a bit. But it's something that you can minimize by, you know, typing and keeping up any sort of communication, because I haven't seen a single bit of communication between you and this team at any point, except maybe the Amumu when he was doing pings for the top lane. But other than that, I've seen no real communication. So a few things to focus on macro plays, wave control, vision, and oh crap, communication. And once you get those 4 things nailed, I'm pretty sure you're going to be able to climb a lot higher than what you're at right now. Your actual mechanics aren't terrible, but it's you're just a little bit unawares of when you should be implementing them and how you should be implementing them. And you really need to, especially in solo queue, you need to be able to organize a little bit of this chaos, because right here we can see a Caitlyn farming away, and she looks like a free kill for the Annie and the Evelynn. But of course that was just a bait, and we were both aware of that. But here the Evelynn's just going to die. No, the Evelynn is just going to kill the Caitlyn for free because the Amumu got greedy and went for the kill instead of defending the Caitlyn. And it's really issues like this which are going to be penalized a lot of the time. You went top lane and picked up a free kill on the Twitch, but what you really should have been doing has been bot side, because then you would have been able to pick up a free kill on the Annie and the Evelynn, and probably snowballed that into at least a bot lane tower, maybe even a mid lane tower if you guys had rotated straight to mid. But as a result of all of these pickups that you're getting, like, it's great that you got to pick up top, but you really need to be thinking about why it is that you're going for these kills, because if you were in a different place, going for different members of the team, you would have been able to do a lot more with that lead that you just created, or like, you know, that pressure that you've just relieved, if it was elsewhere. Whereas at the moment, you're just going to be able to farm a free-to-wave top, talk a little bit of smack to the Twitch, and that's literally all that's going to be able to happen. And doing stuff like that is not going to win you the game. And honestly, I don't know if you're going to be able to win this game just based on macro rotations, because like I said, these people aren't doing macro rotations either. They're not doing any sort of impressive macro play, but because you guys keep on going one by one, having no wards at all, it's just going to be able to allow them to pick up free rotations constantly. And now, if you picked up that, you guys should probably do a 4 or 5 man rotation into Baron. But instead, you can see people greeding out with a Caitlyn walking up to a Zac and a Braum, which could easily be turned around on, especially because of the fact that they didn't have vision on Twitch. Now they do, but they didn't have vision on Twitch, which could have really easily been turned into a much better fight for them. And here we can see the Zac going in by himself, whilst the Braum was walking off in the other direction, which is going to be picked up as 2 free kills for you, I believe. And right now, you guys just picked up a 4-man. You should go straight for that Baron. There aren't creeps mid lane. There are some creeps top lane, but you really have to kind of think to yourself, is it better to pick up the Baron and then go for the top lane push, or is it better to go for the top lane push and then the Baron? You know that their spawn timers aren't that long. You know that they're really going to be able to come back up here and defend this. And at best situation, you're going to be able to turn this into an inhibitor and then back. Whereas if you went for the other path, you probably could have picked up a Baron here, and then moved in to get 1 or 2 towers, and then push in for Baron, push in for inhibs based on mistakes made. But it will also give you a load of gold to use, you know, to kind of get yourself ahead. And instead here, we're just going to end up seeing you take 1 tower, because for some reason, you guys got picked off by the Evelyn again, based purely off of a lack of wards and lack of map control, and a lack of macro play. If you went for the Baron, you would have been able to pick up 2 towers for free, and then probably, well, you could pick up the Baron, and even just backed, and then walk down, and try to pick up people who are making mistakes, because their mid team is making a lot of mistakes. And knowing that their team is making a lot of mistakes, you could really easily be turning this, especially on Jarvan, a character which penalizes mistakes really easily. You could be turning this into a huge advantage for your team. Here we see Amumu one-shot the Twitch, which is actually surprising. But the Evelyn's going to be able to pick up the Amumu, and again, you've just lost all sort of the lead that you would have had, based purely on the rotation that you went for. If you went straight for the Baron, instead of doing this play over at the top lane, it gives you a lot less, like, margin for error. Because if you took if you took this Baron, you'd be able to take the Baron, and the second you have Baron, choose if you want to rotate down to mid, or if you rotate down to top. Although, knowing that, you would have had to go there, which means it would have given your teammates some time to back off, regroup, go down mid, and pick up some free towers mid. But instead, we're seeing you suicide once again with an overextension, and if you manage to kill the Evelyn here, I'm surprised. Which really isn't needed, and you did manage to pick up that Evelyn, and actually it's going to end up in you guys getting a lot more kills than you should have. But here comes Annie, who's probably going to pick you up, maybe, but then die as a result. No, the Annie's going to miss everything. But, there's really not much I can say about that. It was a macro misplay and a micro misplay on the enemy team, because they didn't focus you down. They kind of just thought the Evelyn would be fine to 1v1 you. But here, I can predict that just based on the fact that you have no pink wards, that your team's going to, you know, you've gotten a lead, but then you're going to lose that lead, literally for no reason at all. And I wouldn't be surprised to just see the Twitch get away with that free kill, and you guys waste a load of time trying to search him out. And that looks like that's exactly what's going to end up happening. So, knowing this, I'm also going to have a quick look at your build, because I did see that you bought the locket earlier, but you went for Hexlinker here, which is nice, but I disagree with the locket. The locket's a nice item for your team to have, but it really should be on the Gragas, who will now have literally no good MR item to buy. Instead of being on you, you could have already had more and started building in towards other items which have been able to help you deal with this Evelyn. But instead you've got like barely any base stats coming out here, and it really isn't going to be able to, you know, help you out that much. You could have basically had better itemized, you know, pathing going into this part of the match. With that said though, you're doing some decent plays, but you're also doing a hell of a lot of, like, really bad pushes where you should have been backing out a lot sooner. And a lot of your teammates are doing the exact same mistake, where they keep on going out too far with no vision. So, the main thing to take from this game, if anything, is that you really should be warding more. And if you look at the team that they have, you should... Well, now they're going to get a Baron for free because of the fact that your Caitlyn and your Amumu's dead. And again, that little lead that you got there has been completely nullified based on the macro misplays that you guys have been making afterwards. And it's a little bit tragic to see this, because you probably could have won this game off of the fight that went on over there earlier. But instead you threw that lead away by going for a top lane push. With that said, this game isn't lost. There's definitely still ways you can win it, but you need to start playing, you know, the macro level gameplay. And I need to actually explain what macro play is, because if you haven't, you know, got an understanding of that, then all of this is kind of pointless. But basically, macro play is rotations, anything to do with the map, anything to do with build paths, anything that isn't like micro play, basically. Things outside of the game, things inside of the game, strategies, mentalities, etc. That all comes into macro play. And you're making a lot of mistakes on the macro level, a few mistakes such as overextensions in the micro level, but most of it is fundamentally issues with your macro play, such as rotations, knowing where to be, knowing where to pressure, stuff like that. And the macro play is actually what wins games. It's not micro play, that's not true. You can, you know, be the best micro player in the world, but still end up in something like silver if you don't know what to do with the leads that you're creating. And it already comes down to that. So you'll see people who are absolutely terrible in micro play up in diamond a lot of the time, just because of the fact that they have an understanding of macro play and how to take advantages and actually turn them into wins. So that's something that you'd want to focus on. It's something which I can't go into too much into detail in just on one replay analysis though. But looking at you going in here, you go in, manage to pick up a Twitch for free, which again, you really shouldn't have. That was just a bad engage on your part. But the Caitlyn's going to be able to pick up a kill here. And once again, the enemy team have done a misplay. They've got Annie on the wrong side. They haven't really committed into one person. And as a result of that, you guys have been able to pick up some free kills. And now... No, the Echo misses Q. But whilst they're making mistakes, they still have some... Like, they still have some teammates in the right places. They still have some people, you know, patching up those mistakes and being able to take the free... Literally, again, the free objectives that they're being given on a macro level... Just because of the fact that you guys keep on going aggressive in the way that you're doing it, they don't have to force these objectives. They don't have to, because you guys keep on getting caught out because of the lack of vision and lack of team play and communication across the board in this match. And I think we're probably, if I would just fast forward this a little bit, nothing interesting is probably going to happen until it all happens at once, which is what I'm guessing is going to happen here. And there really isn't much to comment on about other than the fact that you guys keep on getting caught out in the wrong places at the wrong times with no wards, and now Evelyn and Twitch are going to be able to pick up a completely free kill on the Caitlyn here. And even though you guys are in position to take Dragon when Dragon hasn't even spawned, there are now creeps pushing up into there, so you have that pressure. There's also the entire enemy team, meaning that you can't get into the base. You're now a Caitlyn down, and all of this, why? Because there wasn't communication and because you guys were in the wrong place at the wrong time. And whilst it might not seem like, oh, you know, it's not my fault, it's just the Caitlyn dying, it's because of the pressure that's not being put on the right place of the map, and because of the lack of any sort of ward control that has ended up with your team literally just straight up being aced and the game being over here. So, I really wanted to speed this one up at this point, because a lot of people will be getting bored at this point, and also, I've been repeating the same points a lot of the time, but in the future I think I'll end up making these videos a little bit differently, and formatting them in a different way, but for now that's going to probably be about it. So I'm going to end it on a few keynotes. First thing to think about is item path optimization. Second thing to think about is minion wave control. The third thing to think about would be macro play, such as rotations, etc., knowing where to be at the right time. Fourth thing to think about is communication. And the fifth thing, which is also very similar to macro play and is linked into that, is warding and making sure you always buy pink wards, which your teammates have ironically now decided to buy pink wards just as their Nexus is exploded. But knowing that those are the, you know, there are those 5 issues which really need to be looked at. If you were to sort out these 5 issues, I could easily see you rising 5 divisions for each one and end up seeing you in plat by the end of the season. But that said, there's only 1 week of this season left, and you could still easily make it, but the first thing to think about is improving on those 5 things, and each of those things is actually its own entity, which could probably do with a session by itself. But it's nice to see that there are some really solid fundamentals, like your microplay isn't bad, you take advantage of people's mistakes relatively well, but you also made a load of mistakes in the later stages of the game, in the mid stages of the game, which allowed them to just take, you know, all of these objectives for free, and then end the game. So there are a few things to work on in terms of micro level and macro level, but it's not that bad. You could still win a lot of games that you're currently low, in my opinion, but it's going to be very hit or miss. It's either you're going to stomp them or you're going to, you know, just straight up lose, which is what we saw in this game. Even though, again, in terms of gold, you guys weren't that far behind, even though your CSs were relatively terrible, and apart from Caitlyn, but she has an insane amount of deaths to her name. It's just a combination of constantly getting caught out and having a lack of communication between teammates that's actually ended up with all of this going to shit. So hopefully we can see improvements to that in future replays that you might end up submitting. But with that said, I'm going to shoot out now. Hope that this has been a decent replay analysis, and I'll see you guys next time and try and make a better one in the future.